If there is a lawful, permitted way, according to the U.S. law, to avoid paying taxes, then why would you pay taxes? They are basically telling you can take this outlet. Taxes is not treated like zakah, like you're a very pious person and make sure you pay as much tax as you can. No, you try to get out of that stuff. Tax avoidance isn't illegal. Tax evasion is. Taxation as a default is actually forbidden in Islam. It is forbidden for the government to reach into your pocket and take money. It's not their money. How do they finance things? So there are exceptions. Now we talk about 3 exceptions. Exception number 1, of course, the security of the nation. Exception number 2, which that entails security inside and outside. So we'll call that number 1, 1A, 1B. So the army and the local law enforcement has to be done from the people. That's the service you're getting, right? Number 2 is that itemized public works. Keep in mind, itemized public works. That means I got to be able to say, this is actually what's being done. So the street has 10 households on it. We're paving your road. All right, we're dividing it amongst you. That's it. You all live here. You're all good. And we're dividing it all amongst you. So it has to be an item. We're picking up your trash. This is the bill from the trash company or whatever the salaries are and divided by this many people in the town. So we actually have to itemize the lists of the public services that, yes, it is possible for the government to say, we're not going to leave it up to you to take the trash out. So we're going to manage that. We're going to manage everything else that's in the public to keep things clean. So we're allowed to do that. And the Sharia, again, the taxation has to be for security and for itemizable public works. It's not just an income that we could store in the bank and in our vaults and then see what we want to do with it. Some people may ask, well, what about other public things like hospitals, for example? So government, ultimately, what is government? It's the people, right? It's the leaders. They pick their leaders and leaders choose amongst themselves. So the people do not only have to work through government. They could work through people's endowments. And the government could establish them or could trigger their establishment, but the people run them. Hospitals, things like that, should be run through people's endowments. These public good. People talk about the government sometimes like this is a parent that has abilities that things are just limited to them. Not at all. But there could be government-backed public endowments. In other words, the government pushes it, spurs it on, it forces it to happen, etc. But it's ultimately a people's endowment. And the Sharia encourages a lot of that, proof of which is that's literally how most of the Sharia most of the Islamic world has ever lived and survived. They functioned by these public endowments. So for us, sometimes you walk around and say, oh, the government's got to do this. The government's got to do that. The government failed me. The government's job should not be expanded. The reason is that when you expand it, it's never going back down. When you tell the government, take care of this for me, take care of that for me, well, they're never going to give it back. They're never going to give that power back. And it's a beginning of corruption. So let's talk about education. Government's not obligated to educate. That's on the people. People's endowments. Yes, it can be government backed. The government can sponsor stuff. They could begin stuff. But when you ask the government to do something, you're never going to get it back. That's number 1. They're going to start enforcing their views on things. That's number 2. And they're going to have to tax for it. And then you're going to complain about the taxation. So hospitals, schools, etc. Yes, the government can be involved in it, but ultimately there is a concept of the people's endowments. And that's really how things should be operated. And they could be like government stamped, the government protects it, etc. But we can't just say it's on the government to do all these things. The Sharia is more inclined towards empowering localities than one large central government. So and when it comes to taxation, that's how you tax. You only should tax for security and inside and outside and for public works. People would love the tax laws in the Sharia. What about punishment? Crimes and punishment. The Sharia does allow for imprisonment, but it's only when the person has gone through several punishments at a time and he's just has to be taken off the streets, or when we're imprisoning him only to prepare for the next case that we're having, or to prepare for the trial, or that he's a flight risk. But to make imprisonment just a default kind of punishment, that's not allowed. Reason is that that person may have other people that he has to take care of at home. He may have dependents. Yes, he may be a criminal in himself, but he may be taking care of a family. He may be doing things like of that nature that are needed. So we can't have just constant imprisonment like this. And I think we all know that it's a scam, and it's just a way to it's an industry, and the customers are the prisoners. So keep them in the prisoners. It's in the government's interest to privatize things sometimes for competitive and cost-saving purposes. That's a good point. The Sharia does not want to. Okay, what is the goal of the government though? So those are the responsibilities. But the concern of the government should be the poor. The government should be concerned with big fish eating little fish. That's a type of harm. The government's. This Umar ibn Khattab was once said, "We have so much wealth." They said to him, "We got so much wealth now these days. Why don't we redo the masjid? We got new marble, we got new all sorts of things. Why don't we redo the masjid?" Umar ibn Khattab, he said, the stomachs of the poor are of greater priority. And that tells us that the goal of government is to lift the victim, to lift the oppressed, to lift the poor. Is it just to give him handouts? No, but it's to ensure that at least the women and children are given handouts. Men can be given handouts if they're zakah eligible. They can take zakah, right? But also to get them up and running, to get them working. When Umar ibn Khattab saw some people out there that were showing up to the masjid and just talking, and he went up to them and he said, "Are you studying? No. Are you memorizing the Quran? No. Are you working?" He's talking about work? No. What are we doing? Oh, just hanging out in the masjid. Umar said, "Don't be a sa'luk, neither in the deen nor in the dunya." So it's one of the things. Can the government create a form of citizenship and control borders? Of course it can. In Hajj, for example, I recently asked Sheikh al-Maghidi, is it lawful for the government to say that the people who are going to fulfill their obligation this year, Hajj, is only XYZ, let's say 2.5 million? He said, yeah, it's their right. And is it their right that someone comes in ihram and they turn him away because he didn't fulfill the paperwork? He said, yes, it's their right. And because it's a lawful law, you have to obey it. So we have no problem with the concept of, it's not, we said the earth is for Allah. Yes, Allah controls the earth, but he gives it to people at certain times and they have rights. So a government does have the right to say, all right, here are the borders. If you want to come into our country, you need to tell us why, and we can permit you or not, because otherwise you overcrowd the country. Others, where are you going to sleep? You're going to sleep on the streets. You're going to roam around. Okay. You get a situation like that, you end up stealing. So the government does have the right to do these things, even in Islam, and we would be obligated to follow these things. How about standing armies? Yes, that will be paid from taxation. All right. What about mandatory conscription? He can conscript the males. He can conscript the males. He cannot conscript females, though. Males only. How do you elect and appoint a government in the Sharia? So the people have leaders. Local leaders come together. The local leaders are brought forth to regional leaders from the region. From the region, they select some, and it goes to the national level. Those leaders, they choose amongst themselves who's going to be their single leader. And they form a shura. And these local leaders should be good at one or both two things, which is God's law and life. How does life work? Trade, the nature of the people, the issues. A lot of expertise is going to be needed. And so we would have one leader and one Senate. That's how things should run. Are tariffs applicable in the Sharia? Tariffs, again, it goes back to benefit, harm and benefit. All right, what about civil laws? Of course, little civic laws like speed limits and all the traffic codes, all that is lawful. But you know what is not allowed for us is to fine people. Yes, so what is the Sharia worried about? The concern of the Sharia is that the government takes the people as a source of income. That's why they're not, the governor, he's allowed to hit you. In other words, he can institute a law. If you break this law, you get hit 4 times. And there's a limit to how that hit is, right? He can't break the skin or the bones. And the one who hits you can't use 2 joints, shoulder and elbow. 1 joint, pick one. and he can't break skin or bone, but he can't take your money. Interesting. The citizenry is not a source of income for the government. This is an important point. The income of the government comes from different things. That's a whole nother subject. Where does the income of a government come? Natural resources, et cetera, et cetera.